Candles gutter in the drafty hall, their flames stooped like broken spines. You sit at the long, groaning table beside lords who no longer speak and ladies who no longer blink. The meats upon their golden plates glisten with fat untouched, steaming like the dead who have forgotten how to rot. The king raises a jeweled goblet and all fall still. Then the king lifts his hand and places it gently atop the boy's head. Fingers curl like roots into hair. He leans down. We whisper. No one hears it but the boy. But you watch the prince's smile flicker, as if touched by frost. The laughter dies. The light dies. The moment dies. The king straightens, turns, and walks away without looking back. The hall breathes again, but it is the breath of a beast that is merely tasted, not yet fed. You do not know it yet, but this is the first night of unraveling. This is where history ends and shadow begins. And you, dear witness, you are seated at its heart, at the cursed feast where the first course was silence and the last shall be blood. You feel it, that creeping frost along your spine. Not from the cold, but from the absence of warmth that follows him wherever he walks. Speak your thoughts in the comments below, subscribe to the channel, and let your bell ring loud in this world of fading echoes. For tonight, you will hear the story of the mad king who killed his own son, and how it happened. He does not smile, he does not toast. He simply stares forward into nothing, as if the void beyond the torches offers more comfort than the gathered souls around him. A feast has been called, a prince is to be honored. And yet in the recesses of this stone-blooded castle, something ancient stirs. Black-winged omen circles the rafters. No one looks up, no one dares to look up. He is called King Othmar, the Redeemer, though none recall what he redeemed. They remember only his wars, the 7 winters of flame, the executions under eclipsed moons, the village of heretics burned alive with the sacred bells still tolling in the steeple. You watch as his gaze flickers briefly to the boy, his son, who sits at the far end of the hall, with hair like candlelight and eyes like unwritten scripture. The prince, the future, the unknowing. He laughs once, a soft and innocent sound, and in that single note the king's fingers tighten on the goblet. No one sees it, save you. No one notices the silver ring at his finger twist against bone like it resents being worn. The boy continues to laugh, oblivious. You look at the others, courtiers dressed in silence, mouths curled upward in painted mimicry of joy. But you see the fear in their eyes, the kind that takes root in marrow. There are rumors. There have always been rumors. You remember how the invitation came? Sealed not in wax but in black pitch, arrived with a crow dead on the windowsill, its beak pierced with a thorn. Attend the feast, the note read, for the heir shall be named. But no titles were spoken this night. No coronation, no declarations, just the feast. And the watching, and the jesters have fallen mute. The only sound, aside from the prince's laughter, is the steady weeping of a lute left unattended on a chair. The sound is not music, it is mourning. And then, as the moon bleeds over the high glass, the king stands. No servant announces it, no fanfare. But every soul in the room rises with the urgency of prey beneath a predator's shadow. He begins to walk, slowly, deliberately, toward the prince. You feel yourself grip the table without realizing, your nails clawing the wood like you refalling, and the grain is the last tether to reason. He stops beside the boy. The silence is unbearable, like a held breath stretched across miles. So if these tales stir you, if the whisper of black thrones and forgotten kings chills your spine as it does mine, I ask you linger with us. Now, let's get to today's story. It arrives in the hour before dawn, when sleep is deepest and defenses lowest. A knock. Not upon the oaken doors of the king's chamber, but on the threshold of memory itself. You awaken in your chamber, breath caught, heart pacing like a hunted thing. Somewhere something has shifted. The sky outside is colorless, a canvas scraped clean by unseen fingers. No footprints, no ash, no corpse. Only a single thorn lodged in the altar stone, as if someone, or something, tried to anchor itself to this world but was refused. A bishop is summoned to perform rites, but when he enters the throne room, he finds only an empty chair. They simply remain, like punctuation marks at the edge of an unread chapter. and a crown floating above it, unmoved by breath or breeze. He leaves and never speaks again. The throne, once gold, now seems dull, tarnished not by time, but by doubt. The king's armor is polished daily, though he does not wear it. Instead, he wears robes, thick, stiff, woven with threads of lead, as if to weigh down whatever darkness threatens to lift him from the ground. The prince is gifted a dagger, ceremonial, beautiful, its hilt shaped like a lion devouring its cub. He thanks his father with a bow. The king says nothing, but his eyes do not leave the blade. And in that moment, you see it begin. Not the murder, not yet, but the rehearsal, the planning, the seed of necessity planted in fear. That day, the king does not eat. The prince is not summoned. The castle holds its breath. Eyed above it all, crows gather, not flying, not cawing, simply watching, as if they too await fulfillment. The prophecy is not spoken to the prince, but he feels it. You see it in his posture, a shift, a heaviness. That night he sits longer by the window, eyes lost in the fog. He asks questions of his tutor, not about history or law, but about patricide and ancient myths. He does not explain why. The tutor grows pale, says nothing, leaves the room, and never returns. Another silence replaces him. Down the hall, footsteps echo. Not hurried, not hesitant, but final. You step out and follow. What else could you do? Not hidden, but wrapped in velvet and tied to his belt like a dagger made of paper. He touches it often, absent-mindedly, as though unsure whether it still exists or if his mind invented it. You begin to understand the depth of it. Not madness, not yet, but a fracture, a split in the mirror that was his soul. For prophecy does not destroy men. It prepares them for destruction. Othmar watches his son more intently now, not with love, nor with pride, but with the careful eye of a falconer unsure whether his bird has tasted man-flesh. When the prince sleeps, the king does not. When the prince sings, the king winces. The child's innocence is a blade, and the prophecy has taught the king to see its edge. In this castle, resistance is treason and curiosity is survival. The guards are gone, the fire has died, and a trail of pale dust leads down toward the chapel. No priest serves here, only relics and secrets no saint would bless. At the altar kneels a figure hunched beneath a cloak of soot. His hands are blackened, his eyes veiled in cataract mists, and his mouth speaks only in fragments, riddles carved from the marrow of time. You do not recognize him, but the king does. He does not ask his name, he does not demand his purpose. For in the presence of prophecy, even monarchs are but listeners. You hide in the shadows, not cowardice, not treachery, only instinct. The figure rises, his hands shaking, not from weakness, but from restraint, as if the truth within him claws its way out. He draws from his sleeve a scroll, but no parchment this. It is skin, stretched and etched with ash. You smell it, you know. It was human once. He reads, not aloud. For this is not meant for ears. The words do not echo. They settle. They rot. The king does not flinch, but his eyes flicker as the prophecy unfurls. The blood of Othmar shall unmake Othmar. The lamb shall be the butcher. The child shall be the gallows. The crown shall fall before the blade touches flesh. The mad seer exhales, and from his mouth comes not breath, but dust, thick, bitter, ancient. The king says nothing. He does not burn the scroll. He folds it, as one might fold a memory too dangerous to forget. The figure collapses, his task fulfilled. No one aids him. No one speaks of it afterward. Later, you watch his servants sweep the chapel and find nothing. The king begins to carry the scroll. In the court, whispers stir. The boy is cursed. The king is haunted. The bloodline is cracked. And always the crows. They do not leave. They do not eat. It is a gift. That's what the servants say. A token of paternal devotion delivered on the cusp of a holy day whose name no one dares speak anymore. The mask arrives in a coffin-shaped box, lined with silks too red to be vermilion and too wet to be dry. No ribbon ties it shut, only an iron clasp, shaped like an open mouth, screaming. They speak of a boy who walks at night with a silver face and empty footsteps. You begin to suspect it is not an object but a contract, Not made by king or artisan, but by something older, something still hungry. The prince grows quieter, sharper. His drawings fill pages. Black trees with no roots, birds with crowns instead of heads, a father bound to a wheel of time. Once, he draws the mask itself. But with no wearer, just the mask alone on a throne of ribs. He shows it to you, smiles faintly, says, "This is what I will become unless he kills me first." You ask who he means? He doesn't answer. A child with a laugh that spoils milk. Doors are locked tighter. Bells are rung in daylight. And above the rooftops, the crows have begun to form patterns in flight. Spirals, circles, and a single shape no one dares name. A throne overturned. One evening, the prince visits the plague ward. Not to help, not to heal, but to observe. He walks through the moaning, the dying, the riddled and wasted, and they fall silent. Some weep, some try to rise and flee. One speaks a name, not his, not yours, but the king's, and dies as the prince bends to listen. He returns, removes the mask, and says, "They know what's coming." He does not elaborate. You ask no more. You are there when the prince opens it. You wish you had not been. It is beautiful, yes. A thing of artisanship so precise it feels like blasphemy. And beneath his breath, when he thinks no one hears, he whispers the boy's name. Not in anger, nor in love, but as one might whisper the name of a storm expected to come at midnight. A storm you cannot outrun, only obey. Silver-beaked, glass-eyed, stitched with black thread made from godless hands. It is a plague mask, but unlike any you have seen. This one is not meant to shield breath. It is meant to silence faces, to erase youth, to remake the wearer. When the boy lifts it from its cradle of velvet and bone dust, it hums. It's not a sound. A vibration in the soul, a dissonant chord only those touched by fate can hear. He turns to you, laughs nervously, presses the mask against his face, and disappears. You do not scream, you do not run, but you feel the change as if the walls themselves inhale. Where the prince once stood, golden, bright, warm, now sits a figure shrouded in the weight of death's elegance. The prince eats nothing, drinks nothing, only sits, observes, watches. The mask sees, and the mask remembers. A tutor tries to remove it later in jest. The boy stabs him with a fork. Not fatally, not even cruelly, but with intent. "Don't touch me when I'm protected," he says, as the blood pools beneath the fallen man. That night, the king sends no punishment. He sends new cutlery, blackened steel, flame-tempered, engraved with the prince's name in runes that glow faintly in moonlight. The boy reads books now, strange books, ones that were sealed, ones you thought lost. Titles like the Bone Litanies, the Crown of Worms, and Flesh by Right, Blood by Law. He does not ask for permission. The king permits it. Because the mask has done what prophecy could not. It has begun the division. The eyes of the mask reflect only shadow. He tilts his head, speaks your name. His voice is the same, but deeper. Older, woven with echoes of voices that should not exist. You beg him to take it off, and he does. The room exhales, light returns, but the boy does not smile. He looks at the mask in his hands like a mirror that knows too much. "Father said it's for protection," he murmurs. "From what you ask." "From prophecy," he replies. He does not understand the word, but he speaks it like a key turning in a door yet unopened. That evening, he wears the mask to dinner. The king says nothing. No one does. The courtiers bow. The servants tremble. In the village below, rumors coil like smoke. The mask is never cleaned, yet it does not stain. It is never locked away, yet it is never stolen. The king does not wear armor anymore. He wears robes like a priest of execution. The court does not decay. It hollows, slowly, like fruit left in a sunless cellar. Skin intact, flesh gone to air. You notice it first in the way people speak. Sentences trimmed of meaning. Eyes that don't meet yours, praise for the king. Spoken too quickly, too mechanically. As if words are bullets dodged rather than truth offered. They wear their titles like iron masks, and behind them, their souls curl in on themselves. Tapestries fade quicker. Stones seem slicker. The air tastes of copper and mold. You ask him why, he replies. Because gold is for gods, and there are no gods here. He does not meet your eyes. No one meets eyes anymore. The mirrors in the castle are turned to face the walls. The portraits are repainted with featureless faces. At dinner, when the prince lifts his goblet, no one drinks until he lowers it. The king watches him now, always, not with pride, not with fear, but with a kind of sick reverence, the way a prisoner watches the executioner polish his blade. The great stained glass windows darken not with grime, but with time reversing itself. Scenes once vibrant now bleed into one another, until all that remains is a haze of throne and thorn. The king does not flinch. The prince tilts his head. At first, harmless things. What is the weight of fire? Do shadows remember? But then, when did my mother die? Wait. What is buried beneath the throne? Why does father no longer dream? You hear them, whispered like riddles, slipped like knives between layers of protocol. The king never answers, but his hand always drifts to the scroll at his side. The prophecy. The rot is not just in the walls now. It is in the bones of those who serve, and in the gaze of those who rule. The screaming stops only when the man is forced to bow, blood pooling at his feet. No one speaks of him again. But afterward, the court becomes quieter still. The next morning, a new rule appears on the hall doors, written in bone-char ink. Do not speak the name of the heir after midnight. No one dares ask why. You suspect it's not to protect the prince, but to protect the kingdom from what might answer back. The knight kneels before the king and rises without a face, not stripped, not disfigured, but forgotten. You ask others later who he was. They blink as if the question has no meaning. Court exists now in a strange in-between, not life, not death, but ritual. Every movement calculated to prevent attention, every word chosen to avoid consequence. You see, nobles practicing their bows in mirrors, repeating the same 4 phrases over and over like holy mantras. Long live the king. Long live the heir. May the bloodline endure. May the throne stand firm. They do not believe. They only hope belief is no longer required. You watch a duke forget the name of his own son during court proceedings? You watch a lady laugh too long at a jest that never existed? The court jests, now not with humor, but with obedience. A nervous theater where the audience outnumbers the actors and the script was written in fear. There is music, but no melody. Dances, but no rhythm. Banquets, but no hunger. All mouths move, but nothing is said. For in this place, silence is safer than sincerity. The king presides over it all like a statue carved from regret. His eyes see through people rather than into them. His council meetings have grown shorter, decisions made before questions are asked. Those who question are not punished. They simply vanish. First from records, then from rooms, then from memory. The prince, now always masked during formal gatherings, sits at his father's right, silent but attentive. When he turns his head, people flinch. Some say it's the way the mask reflects candlelight, how the glass eyes flash not silver but red, like coals remembering fire. Others say it's the sound the mask makes when he breathes, not wheezing. Something deeper, like a bell tolling underwater. But most do not say anything. Because to say anything is to admit you still have a voice, and voices are dangerous. You begin to see it in the walls. One afternoon, you pass by the court chapel and find the high priest scraping gold leaf from the altar, placing it carefully into a black pouch sewn from funeral garments. Then one night, a minor lord is dragged screaming through the court, his mouth sewn shut, his eyes wide with a terror that suggests he knows something no one else should. The prince begins to speak only in questions. You realize the court is not dying, it is being prepared, preserved, hollowed out to make space for something else, something waiting to be enthroned. It hangs where no one dares to look, not in the throne room, nor chapel, nor any hall where feet regularly tread. You find it by accident, or perhaps by design, but the longer you stare, the more the image bleeds. The gold turns to rust. The prince grows taller than the king, then begins to devour him, not with teeth, but with light. You walk the halls and see the patterns repeating. The way the servants avoid the east wing, no one questions it. The prince, however, begins to draw again, and in his drawings are fragments of the tapestry, the crown of hands, the bleeding chest, the faceless kneeler. You feel it when the prince stands too close, and you remember the woven eyes, all watching, all waiting, all seeing what must be. When you confront him, gently, he smiles. It's already happened, he says. We're just waiting for the thorns to bloom. The way the prince always stops beside the statue of the weeping knight, the way the king speaks to his cup as if it listens. You realize they have all seen the tapestry, or perhaps they are part of it. You are not sure anymore which is the world and which is the weaving. You return later with others. You say nothing. You watch them as they stare. Some weep, some pray. One tears out her eyes. His brightness scorches, and the king's figure burns black, crumbling like parchment in fire. The court melts into trees with no roots. The sky weeps red. Crows fly backward. You bring this to the king, he only nods. It was written, he says. Now it is being embroidered. And he returns to his scroll, his whispering, his rituals of silence. At the center is the throne, not as it is, but twisted. Its arms grown into gnarled limbs, its back crowned with thorns that pierce a crown made of hands. Beneath, a figure kneels, faceless, bleeding from a wound in the chest that forms the shape of a child. The castle has begun to lead you. Corridors turn unfamiliar, stairwells descend further than architecture should allow, and candles light themselves as you pass. Eventually you reach a door with no handle. It opens when you press your hand against the wood, not pushed, accepted. Inside, the chamber breathes. That is your first thought. The air is not still. It exhales cold against your skin, and from the far wall, it watches you. Not eyes thread, woven eyes, hundreds of them, stitched into a tapestry the size of a ship's sail. A mural of madness. At first, it seems a royal tableau. The king in golden robes, the prince at his side, the court bowing in concentric circles. You take a step closer, and the threads move. Not flutter, shift, the eyes blink. The mouth of the king opens and whispers a soundless cry. You stumble back. Behind you, the door remains closed. There is no handle. You are not permitted to leave until the tapestry finishes showing what it must. So you watch. You endure. You feel the threads tighten in the wall, pulse with breath, hum with ancient music made of mourning and prophecy. You see the king hold a dagger. You see the prince extend his hand, offering a rose. The dagger plunges. The rose falls. The wound glows. The mask lies discarded. The crown rolls away untouched. And in the final image, both king and son lie beneath the throne, roots growing from their mouths, blooming in silence. When the door opens, you are not the same. Something has coiled inside your mind. Not madness, but memory. The king does not speak of the chamber, but he orders the eastern towers sealed. The walls are sick, he declares. They dream too loud. So later you find thorns growing beneath the throne, not carved, not planted, living, pulsing with slow, impossible sap. The court does not speak of the tapestry, but the silence has a name now. You hear it when you sleep. You see it in the dreams of others. They call him the royal leech, but no one speaks his name. Not because it is forbidden, but because it is forgotten, swallowed by centuries. Preserved like a relic too holy or too hideous to speak aloud, he arrives without announcement, born not by carriage but by silence. One day, he is simply there, seated at the king's right hand, where once the chancellor sat before his body, unraveled into salt. As though the physician has become a confessor to his fears, a guardian against the prophecy curled at his hip. You hear the rumors in the servant halls, that the leech once served a king who ruled for 300 years, that his blood is not blood but ink. He cuts his palm and presses it against the throne. The stone stains, but does not drink. But before he disappears, he leaves a single item behind in the prince's room, a crown made of dried leeches. It's toned into a circlet with strands of the prince's own hair. The prince never wears it, but he places it beside his mask, where it hums quietly each night, like something that remembers being alive and wants to be worn again. The blood remains, marking the seat of kingship with a promise. When asked why, the boy says, "Because I must learn what it means to wound what rules me." No one questions him, not anymore. That he can leech not illness, but destiny. One maid swears she saw him remove a stillborn fate from the womb of a dying girl and plant it in the roots of the apple orchard. The fruit has not grown since. The physician wears no mask. His face is pale and dry, as if blood has not visited him in decades. The boy is barefoot, standing in a ring of ash. The leech paints something onto the soles of the prince's feet, glyphs that vanish as soon as they re-seen. The boy walks forward. Flowers wilt where he steps. Later, you hear the king shout, a sound rare, raw, and torn from somewhere deep. He orders the physician to his chambers. You follow. There is a fight, but no words are raised. Just silence that vibrates, the sound of a goblet breaking, the sudden scent of burnt wool. When the doors reopen, the leech leaves without harm. The king sits alone, staring at his hands as if they've betrayed him. His robes are stitched from cured vellum, and on their surface are inked the names of those he has healed. None of them live. He does not bow. But he begins his work the moment his feet touch the black stone of the court. The boy is not healing. He is becoming. And the king, though he watches with dry eyes and clenched hands, does not stop it. Perhaps he believes this path will divert the prophecy. Perhaps he believes the physician has extracted the fatal thread. Or perhaps, in the silence of his chambers, he whispers a darker truth to himself. Better a mad heir than a buried one. Witness. The first sacrament the night the prince coughs. Just once. A sound no sharper than a drawn breath. Yet within the hour, the leech is summoned. He appears in the prince's chambers, carrying no bag, no instruments, only a bowl of water, the color of old parchment. He sets it down, gestures for all to leave. No one resists, remain hidden in the stonework, behind a tapestry that still smells faintly of thorns. You see the physician produce a scalpel, not of metal, but of obsidian, edge sharp as memory. With calm hands, he makes a small incision beneath the boy's ear. No blood, no pain. The prince does not flinch. Instead, from the wound, a single drop of shadow oozes. Not fluid, but darkness. It twists in the air before falling into the bowl, which shivers as if alive. The leech drinks it. The next day, the prince no longer coughs, but he no longer blinks either. His gaze lingers too long. His questions have become more precise. Do you believe time is reversible if enough blood is spilled? Can a man be both king and corpse at once? What is the true weight of guilt, and is it hereditary? You suspect the physician answers these questions, not with words, but with sacraments. Rites performed behind closed doors, where flesh and memory are rewritten. The boy changes. He moves with less sound. His dreams leak into reality. He no longer sleeps with his mask. He wears it now, not as protection, but as part of himself. He refers to it as the second face. The king does not question the leech's methods. In fact, he seems relieved. One morning, you find the leech in the garden, kneeling beside the prince. That night, the prince performs a sacrament of his own. The physician visits the court less frequently after that. His work is nearly done. The court, hollow as it is, senses the change. But prophecy does not bargain. It does not forget. You do not know when the stillness begins. Only that movement becomes a threat. At first, it's small. A dog freezes in the courtyard for an entire day. Eyes glassy, legs rigid, tail suspended mid-wag like time has misplaced its thread. But beneath the decree is fear, a kind that curls around his voice like smoke from a dying fire. All members of the court are summoned to the Hall of Echoes. You stand shoulder to shoulder with dukes, knights, scribes, and those too terrified to protest. You follow it one night deep into the bowels of the keep, into a room where no air moves. When we run, we forget. When we stand still, we remember. You ask him what he remembers. He does not answer, only walks away, leaving behind the scent of candle smoke and iron. Children are born without cries. Sleepwalkers stand for hours in moonlight. One night, a counselor dies mid-speech and is not discovered until morning. His corpse had remained so perfectly still none had noticed, and says stillness is not the absence of life, it is the return to it. All you know is that when the day comes, and it is coming, only those who have mastered stillness will survive what breaks through the throne. Then he leaves. In his wake, You find your reflection weeping in the mirror, though you are dry-eyed. You do not look into that mirror again. The line between life and stillness thins. The ritual no longer ends. It simply fades into the fabric of existence. There, in a circle of salt and broken mirrors, stands the prince, alone. That night, the throne room is found empty, not of people, but of time. The clocks spin backward, the torches burn blue. Every sound becomes echo. The prince appears at dawn, mask cracked slightly at the chin, hands dripping with dark water. The ritual does not serve the crown, he says. It serves the truth beneath it. The king says nothing, but he allows the rituals to continue. Around him are statues. No, not statues. Courtiers, frozen, eyes open, alive. He speaks softly to them. Words you cannot hear, and as he speaks, they nod in perfect unison, as if understanding some ancient language written only in stillness. You wake unable to move, not paralyzed. Stilled, as if something is watching, waiting for you to understand. When he finishes, he draws a symbol in the air, a shape that burns the edges of your memory, and they collapse. Breathing once more, unaware they had ever stopped. The hall is cold, no torches burn. Only the light of the masked prince, who stands at the center, eyes hidden, arms raised. You will hold, he says. You will listen. The doors seal behind you. Then, a servant is found standing in the larder, hand outstretched toward a loaf of bread, moving for hours until touched, at which point she collapses, bones turn brittle, breath expelled as dust. No movement, no speech, no blinking. To falter is to fall. Some do. One man turns his head just a twitch and vanishes. Not in blood, not in smoke, but in absence. He is unmade. The others grow rigid, tears freezing on their cheeks, muscles locking into unnatural postures. You hold, you endure. Your body becomes a monument to obedience. Time fractures into endless seconds, each longer than the last. When the doors finally open, many do not walk out. They are carried, eyes open, breathing shallow, their minds far away. The prince nods. The king says nothing. The prince is seen kneeling in the chapel, hands clasped in prayer to no known God, and does not stir even as the candles burn to waxless stubs. When he rises at dusk, the prints of his knees have sunk into the stone itself. You try to ask him what he was doing? He replies, practicing. It is the king who orders the first ritual of stillness. A test, he says. A meditation. The ritual lasts a day. The ritual is repeated monthly, then weekly, then nightly. It becomes part of life like meals or prayers. The court learns to still themselves even when not commanded. Conversations pause mid-sentence as though some invisible bell has rung. Children do not cry. Birds do not sing. You find yourself holding your breath at odd moments, unsure why. The stillness is no longer ritual. It is law. I knock for her. You begin to hear it beneath the silence, a heartbeat not your own, thudding faintly through the stone. Later he tells you stillness reveals truth, movement lies, touches your chest. The king attempts to assert himself once, calling an end to the ritual. You watch as the court becomes less human. Their movements when they happen are precise, mathematical. In your dreams you see statues walking through forests of mirrors, speaking in your voice but saying things you do not remember learning. The prince visits your chamber one night. He does not knock, stands beside your bed. The ritual is complete, but its purpose remains unspoken.
It should not exist. That is your first thought as you lift the cover. Bound in hide that feels both older and too familiar. Sealed not with clasp or chain, but with a sigh. A soft exhale of something ancient recognizing its reader. You find it not in the royal library, not in the crypt, but in the prince's chamber. resting on the table beside the crown of leeches and the silent mask. You hear it in your dreams, pages rustling like dry wings, words chanting themselves into your spine. One morning, you find him in the prince's chamber, holding it open to the final page, the unwritten one. He does not look at his son. He looks at the page as though trying to etch the future into it with the weight of his stare. It won't change anything, the prince says. The king closes the book, and for a moment, he appears older than stone, more hollow than the core. He leaves without a word. You see it in the prince's eyes, deeper now, layered with knowledge that does not belong to childhood. The guards begin carrying ceremonial blades reversed, hilts forward, as if the servants hum a song you cannot identify, one that makes your teeth ache. You do not know which. But afterward, he weeps, silently, violently, his body trembling as if he's just murdered something precious. It was a good king, he says. I didn't want to remember him this way, yes? He only looks to the sky where no stars remain and whispers, the one before my father. The courtiers stop attending meals. They are not absent. They are simply elsewhere. The prince reads the book daily now. Not for knowledge, for familiarity. He strokes the cover like a pet. The mask remains by his side, but he no longer wears it. Their ears bleed when you speak the tongue. The court continues to perform its hollow rituals, but they do so with the weight of ghosts pressing down upon their shoulders. Even the shadows move differently now, as if they too await the completion of the story. I want to look him in the eye, he says. When he decides, he quotes the book without knowing. Or perhaps he knows too well. There's always a reason, he says. They never kill us out of cruelty, only out of memory. You ask what he means. He replies, because we've done it before, and they remember. He spends long hours staring into the fire that no longer burns in his heart. You find pieces of the book rewritten in his own hand, fragments scattered through the castle, on mirrorbacks, beneath plates, in the folds of his robes. He has begun to author his own intrigue, yet still he waits, not with hesitation, but with hope that delay might unmake destiny. But the book does not close. It breathes beside the prince's bed. It waits for ink, for action, for the hand that will make the final mark. He does not stop you. He watches. When your fingers touch the pages, he only says, every king fears it. Every son eventually opens it. The book has no title upon its cover. The words flicker faintly on the first page, scrawled in ink that seems to shift when you blink. The book of unfathers. You read, you cannot help it. Each page is a grave. Each chapter, a confession. It chronicles kings, not by their triumphs, but by their betrayals. Each one having murdered their heir. Each one convinced they had no choice. Some did it by steel, others by poison. Still others by silence, so complete their children withered before ever inheriting breath. You find stories written in spirals, in reverse, in languages that do not belong to this world. You find a section written in teeth, embedded in wax, a parchment stitched from tongue, and always, at the end of each entry, a single line etched in red. The blood knew. The blood bathed. You read the tale of King Harrowing of Thorns, who drowned his infant son in a basin of wine to prevent the prophecy of a forest made of bones. The forest came anyway. You read of Queen Valeska the Unmathod, who bore 6 children and fed them one by one to a clock that foretold her death. The clock stopped. She did not. Then comes King Othma, your king. His page is blank. Only the title remains. The father who waits. You stare. The prince closes the book. It's not written yet, he says. You can't record a death that hasn't happened. You try to forget, but the book does not leave you. The king discovers the book eventually, or perhaps he already knew. After that day, the castle changes again, decides what you ask, to become The king stopped speaking to his advisors. And you realize with dread clarity, are now part of its unwritten chapter. For you have read the book, and all who read it must bear witness. You try to warn others. No one listened. Some cannot hear you at all. One night, the prince burns a single page from the book, and the book closes on its own, but not for long.
It begins as a whisper beneath water, not the splash of sound that echoes through halls when basins are filled, but something deeper, older, like a voice trying to remember the shape of words. You hear it first in the prince's chamber during one of the sleepless nights when the moon refuses to rise. Then consonants snap into place awkwardly, as if the mouth forming them is underwater, struggling against the density of meaning. Always full, always still. But when the prince approaches, it stirs. Not like wind across water, like breath, like listening. The king orders it removed once. That same night, 3 guards are found suffocated, lungs full of brine, mouths open in silent screams. No water is found near them, no struggle. Only the faint scent of salt and the mark of a silver curve pressed into their cheeks. The ewer is returned to the chamber without comment. It gathers the drowned, the executed, the erased. It speaks with the grief of sons and the madness of fathers. He guides your hand to the surface of the water. His crown no longer fits. He wears it tilted now, like it weighs more than gold. His robes fray. His footsteps falter. When he speaks to the court, it is not of governance, but of tides, of drowning, of visions he cannot unsee. There is a voice, he says, and it comes from below. A witness turned chronicler, scribe of the last breaths before the breaking. The courtiers nod, but their eyes betray them. They know, they've heard, or they fear, they soon will. It is warm, too warm, like something alive. You listen at first, only silence, then a name. Your name spoken in your mother's voice. And then another voice, one you don't know, speaking your death. Not how, not when, just the fact of it. The inevitability, the shape of it. You pull your hand back, but the water clings, stretching like sinew until it snaps. For days, your skin smells of the sea. When the prince listens, he hears their warnings. When the king listens, he hears his sentence. The court begins to avoid the room altogether. The servants no longer clean it. Dust gathers around every object except the basin, which remains spotless. As if dust fears it too, Othmar, it says. Not the king, not the man. The name, the curse, the sound that began this line and must now end it. Only the basin, silver and sullen, steaming faintly. The court gathers, unsure, stands beside it, mask in one hand, the Book of Unfathers in the other. This, he says, gesturing to the basin, is the true air. The water ripples. The king does not stand, he only watches, eyes dim, lips moving soundlessly. Later, in the quiet of his chambers, he speaks to the basin alone. You listen from beyond the wall. Tell me how it ends, he begs. Tell me it's not yet written, the water replies. The king weeps. The king approaches it with caution, like a soldier nearing the edge of a cursed field. He looks into it, sees nothing, or so he claims. But his mouth begins to tremble, out of fear, out of recognition. No, he says softly. You were gone. I buried you. And the water says something in return. You do not hear it. But the king falls to his knees. The prince does not react. He nods. Yes, he replies. I know, I've read it. You dare to ask what he means. The prince turns. The ewer knows the names, he says. Not just ours, all of them. It remembers those who drowned in thrones they could not carry. He dips his hands into the ewer beside his bed, an antique of black and silver, warped by time, carved with figures that writhe when unobserved. As his fingers stir the surface, he listens, then he speaks. It's not to you, not to himself, but to something below. You lean closer. The water does not ripple, but it replies. At first, only vowels, drawn out, wavering notes that stretch like tendons pulled from bone. You begin to watch the basin. It fills itself now, though no servant touches it. And then it speaks to the king. You are there. The room is dark, no torches, no moon.
Why no nights?
From that night on, he does not look the prince in the eye. You begin to understand the truth. The ewer does not speak with one voice. It is a chorus of all those unspoken, unrecorded, and unremembered. One day, the prince invites you to listen. The king grows pale. The prince places the ewer on the throne one evening, without announcement, but the tears are not for his son. They are for himself, for what he must do, or what he already has. And through the silver sheen, you see your own reflection flicker. Not as you are, but as you will be. The ewer hums. It waits. It appears one morning without procession or maker's mark, set silently upon the stone pedestal in the center of the court. A gift, the prince says, but he does not say from whom. The clock is large, wrought in iron, darkened, not by paint or tarnish, but by something deeper, like rusted memory. The courtiers murmur of omens. The bishop flees the court the moment his gaze locks with the clock's face. You watch the prince place his hand upon the iron surface and smile. It doesn't measure hours, he says. It measures endings. They lift it, struggle with its weight, impossibly heavy, though hollow, and vanish the moment they cross the threshold of the hall. Gone. No sound, no blood. Only the scent of smoke and a smear of shadow where their feet once stood. Clock returns by morning in the same place, ticking as though nothing had happened. The pedestal is warmer now. You do not touch it. When you ask what that means, he shrugs, almost childlike. It counts what we have left. Others freeze in place for hours, unaware they have paused. You see it in his hands, always twitching, always reaching toward a dagger that isn't there. He carries no weapons now, only silence. And the prophecy, frayed at the edges, reread until the ink begins to smudge from sweat. One woman wakes from sleep aged 20 years, hair silvered, fingers curled like wilted flowers. The kitchen fires refuse to stay lit. The wine in the cellars turns to black syrup. And outside, the trees bend unnaturally toward the keep, as though listening. Its face bears no numbers, no glass, no hands. His footsteps echo longer than they should. He no longer speaks to the prince, speaks only to the clock. They glow faintly, bleeding through the stone like rot. We ask him what will happen when the wall is filled. Then there will be no more waiting, he says, no more mercy. What must I do, he whispers. How can I stop it? The clock never answers. Dreams fracture, hours vanish. You wake feeling older, displaced, a few heartbeats out of sync with yourself. One night you dream of the clock breaking, but what shatters is not iron, but the sun. You wake to darkness at noon, you look out the window. There is no sky, only the reflection of the court, upside down, bleeding light through the stone. But its ticking quickens, imperceptibly, day by day. Not faster, just hungrier. He says nothing. He doesn't need to. He has learned its language, its measurements, its price. Just a hollow disc, ringed by symbols that do not belong to any known tongue. Twisted curves, serrated loops, glyphs that change when you turn away. The pages begin to flutter, untouched, flipping toward the final empty chapter. When they stop, the clock emits a sound. Not chime, not bell, but a kind of sigh, as if recognizing what is yet to happen. The king enters the court moments later, breathless, as though summoned by fate itself. He stares at the clock. Why is it here? He asks no one. The prince answers anyway, because prophecy is not a matter of if, father, only when. And though it has no hands, it ticks, a slow rhythmic pulse, as though the thing is not keeping time but exhaling it. The king does not acknowledge its presence, though he steps around it with care, as one might avoid a freshly dug grave. You begin to feel it, that pressure, the weight of time thickening, not in minutes but in dread. The sky seems lower. The wind tastes stale. You hear echoes where none should exist. The clock ticks not into the air, but into the bones of the keep. Servants grow forgetful, mistaking noon for midnight, preparing dinner when no sun has risen. Castle bells fall out of sync. One tolls 13, another rings backward. In the gardens, shadows cast themselves eastward regardless of the sun's path. And always, the clock ticks. Slow, steady, pulsing like the heartbeat of a dying god. The prince brings the book of Unfathers to the clock. He opens it beside the pedestal, and waits. That night, the king tries to move it. He commands 6 guards to carry the device away. The court begins to unravel. Nobles flee under cover of fog. You see the king age too, not in body but in posture. His back hunches. His eyes grow hollow. The prince marks each tick now. He carves symbols into the wall behind the throne. 1 for every pulse. You notice it most in your sleep. The prince does not sleep anymore. He sits beside the clock, eyes closed, breathing in rhythm with its tick. And the king, once a god of war and wrath, now walks like a man condemned by time itself. The clock ticks. And you, unwilling keeper of this descent, count the seconds between breath and oblivion. At first, you believe the glass is simply cracked, a flaw in craftsmanship, a trick of light. The mirror, tall and rimmed in tarnished silver, hangs in the prince's antechamber, behind the velvet curtain no one touches. But one evening, drawn by instinct or some whisper from the ewer, you pull the curtain back and stare. What you see is not yourself. What you see is the absence of reflection. You blink. You raise your hand. Nothing moves in the mirror. It is not a surface. It is not even glass. You ask him what he sees. What he will do, he says, and what I will allow. You don't understand. He smiles. Reflections aren't truth. They're permission. Then he covers the glass with the velvet once more. But you feel it beneath the fabric. Watching, listening, waiting to erase, he burns his portraits. He clutches the prophecy scroll in his sleep. He orders statues of himself torn down. If there is nothing left to reflect, he says, then the prophecy cannot be fulfilled. You enter. He stands before the mirror, both hands pressed to the glass. His voice is barely audible. Show me the moment. Let me choose it. The mirror answers not with sound, but with movement. The surface ripples, just once, and he gasps. Not in fear, in understanding, he turns to you. It's not his death I must witness. It's mine. You ask if he means metaphorical? He shakes his head. No. Mine. The part of me that still hopes. Then he dons the mask. But the mirror does not require statues. It requires only memory. It is a hole. Flat, cold, unyielding. A window not into a room. He does not speak of the mirror, but he speaks more often to himself. In his own chambers, he begins placing candles in a circle, muttering names of long-dead sons, asking them forgiveness for crimes he has not yet committed. You hear him weep at dawn. Not the sobs of a man broken, but the quiet mourning of one whose hands remember what his heart refuses to admit. But into the space where rooms cease to exist, you turn away. You feel ill, as if some part of you has been subtracted. You see him standing there, breathing. But the glass shows only the wall. He does not move. He does not speak. He nods once and walks away. From that moment on, no mirror in the keep reflects him. He passes through hallways unseen, even by light, speaks less. When he does, the words fall like stones into wells, deep, echoing, irreversible. The courtiers begin to avert their eyes, not out of fear, but out of confusion. They cannot remember his face, only the mask. The prince enters. He sees you. He does not scold. Instead, he says, "It took my face first." The king himself gazes into a basin of water and sees only the walls behind him. He panics. He screams, "I am still here." He roars at no one. "I am still Othmar." But the water remains blank, and the silence that answers him is crueler than any denial. That night, he shatters every looking glass in the keep. But he cannot touch the one in the prince's chamber. It resists. Not by magic. By law. You glance at him. I looked into it a year ago. It saw me. And then I began to vanish. Not to others, to myself. Walks to the mirror, stands before it, and removes his mask. His face is calm, beautiful, pale like candlelight, eyes heavy with knowing. He gazes into the void. It doesn't reflect what's there, he says. It reflects what's left. You stare. There's still no image. Not of him, not of you, not of the room. Only stillness and shadow. As though the world beyond the frame has already forgotten what it means to remember. You begin to notice others vanish. Not in body, but in reflection. Servants polish mirrored trays and see nothing. Courtiers pass windows and cast no echo of form. The mirror is not a tool, it is a sentence. One night you pressed your palm against it. It is cold, but beneath that cold is pressure, like something on the other side leaning gently into your bones. You hear it whisper, not a voice, not words, just a suggestion. Soon, you step back. You feel thinner, not physically. Existence itself feels stretched, diluted, as though you have been glimpsed by something that only keeps what it understands. The prince begins visiting the mirror nightly, sometimes with his mask, sometimes without, sometimes holding the Book of Unfathers. He never speaks during these moments. He simply watches. The king avoids that wing of the keep. One day, the prince looks into the mirror and vanishes from reflection entirely. Not a flicker, not a blur, nothing. You watch the king deteriorate. He dresses in layers, as though hiding from touch, and memories cannot be burned. That night, the prince leaves the door to his chamber open, and in the mirror, you see something. Not a reflection, but a replacement. It is not announced. No crier rings the bell. No parchment is nailed to the castle gates. Yet you feel it in the marrow of the stones, in the stillness of the halls, in the hush of breath that passes like fog through the teeth of every servant. The trial has begun. Now it is stripped bare, tapestries removed, the throne itself shrouded in black cloth. The windows are sealed. The banners of lineage hang upside down, as if ashamed of what they are about to observe. The only light comes from a single candle, placed upon the floor where the sun once pooled each morning. The prince kneels beside it. He produces a quill, no ink. He pricks his own palm and lets the blood fall into the groove of the parchment. It hisses faintly. "I already did," the prince says. "The moment I returned your gaze, the king looks up. Then why am I still breathing?" The prince walks toward him, kneels, removes the mask. His face is wet, but no tears fall. "Because you never stopped being my father," he whispers, "and I never stopped being your son." The king's mouth opens to speak, but he chokes on the words. No sound, just a dry sob that shakes the veil of his ears. "Write it," he says. "If this is your truth, inscribe it. Let the Unfathers welcome you." The king trembles, his hands shake, steps forward, kneels beside the book, takes the quill. The king lies still, eyes closed, expression unreadable, not cold, not lifeless, but still, as if waiting for history to decide what kind of death this was. And he writes, not quickly, not neatly, but with the agony of a man etching out the final version of his own soul. You do not look. You do not want to know what words he chooses. But the air shifts as he finishes. The book closes itself. Across from him, in the shadow between columns, sits the king. Not on a chair, not in his crown, but cross-legged like a penitent child. He does not speak. Neither of them do. Not a trial of justice, nor of crime, but of inevitability. A performance staged by the bones of fate. Follow the prince through the darkened corridors, his mask gleaming faintly in the lantern's dying glow. The throne behind him begins to creak, wood sighing like old lungs, as though it, too, has waited long enough. You do not speak. You do not move. For you have borne witness to the most dangerous judgment of all, the one passed not by blade, but by truth. He carries no weapon, only the Book of Unfathers, tucked beneath one arm. Behind him walks no guard, no counsel, only silence itself, dressed in mourning. The hall into which he steps was once the throne room. You are the only one who dares enter. No courtiers remain, no priests, no scribes. There is no jury, no witness, only memory and the burden of its retelling. Only the shared, unbearable weight of a prophecy that has been fed too long. The king stands. His eyes are sunken, his skin as thin as parchment. I was told you would destroy me, he says. So I destroyed the part of you that could. The prince tilts his head. But you haven't yet. No, the king admits. Not yet. A silence follows, vast and terrible, as though all the centuries before them hold their breath. The prince lays the book upon the ground between them. The king does not touch it. He stares at it like a wound returned. The prince speaks first. Do you know why you've summoned me? His voice is soft, filtered by the mask, but it carries like wind through dry branches. The king answers after a long pause, "Because I must choose between fate and guilt. There is no accusation. There is no defense." The prince opens the book to the final page, still blank.
Now the sentence.
The king hesitates.
Will you pass it?
And then, in a gesture older than justice, the prince leans forward and kisses the king's forehead. The candle gutters. Darkness blooms like ink across parchment. You hear the soft thud of a body collapsing. You step forward, breath held. The prince stands alone. The book remains at his feet. Outside, the clock ticks. Inside, the air does not smile. The trial ends not with a verdict, but with a breath. He does not raise a sword. There is no axe, no scaffold, no trumpets. The execution does not need them, for what the king performs now is not a killing of flesh, but of legacy. Slow, deliberate, intimate. In the days that follow the silent trial, you watch him retreat into a place far beyond sorrow. Inside, folded neatly, lies the robe he wore the day his firstborn died. Or perhaps it fits too well, sunken into his brow like roots searching for a place to die. He stands before the empty court, lifts his arms, and speaks to no one. "Let the execution be done," he says. "Let the king fall by the hand of the king." He removes the mask from a pedestal, not the prince's his own. One you have never seen. A twisted thing of iron and bone, shaped like his own face, but aged and warped. The eyes empty sockets, the mouth frozen in a scream of command. He holds it in trembling hands, then drapes it across the throne. "I once thought I was saving the kingdom," he tells you. "But all I ever did was delay its price." You do not answer. He does not expect one. Outside, the sun rises bloodless over a sky that refuses to turn blue. Speaks little, eats less. He walks the halls as though measuring them one final time, not in paces, but in regrets. The prince does not follow. He waits. Not with malice, not with hope. Only with the patience of one who has already seen the ending in a mirror that reflects nothing. The king begins to dismantle his own image. One by one, the emblems of Othmar, the Redeemer, are taken down. Banners burned, coins melted, hymns rewritten in monotones. He orders the church bells struck silent, their tongues removed. "Let no metal sing of me," he says. Voice dry as a book left too long in the sun. The courtiers do not return. The court, such as it was, has become a mausoleum of motionless heralds and watching portraits with painted-over faces. Only the crows remain, thick now upon the battlements, silent and fat with omen. You find the king in the armory, alone, opening a rusted chest that has not been touched in decades. That evening, he dons the crown for the first time in months. It no longer fits. He places it over his face and vanishes. It's not from sight, but from meaning. In that moment, Othmar ceases to be man or king. In between them, something breaks. Not bone, not vow, but the tether that held them in the same story. The king's mask crumbles, slow as autumn, flakes falling like ash. His crown splits. A crack down the center, a groan from the wood of the throne. He begins to bleed. Not from skin, but from memory. He forgets his name, forgets his reason. And as he topples from the throne, you hear him whisper the last words of a dying lineage. "I did everything I was told." He becomes the function of the act, the necessary hand, the deliverer of undoing. The prince enters without ceremony. The hall does not echo his steps. He kneels before the throne, not in submission, but in final recognition. The prince places the shattered crown at his father's feet. He does not wear it, not yet. He stands, mask in hand, eyes red not from tears but from having seen too much. The masked king raises his hand, not in benediction, not in strike, but in motionless judgment. And then he speaks. What is left of a father who kills to prevent being killed? The prince answers, "Only the part that cannot die." Yeah, there's no struggle. The prince does not rise. The king lowers his hand. The prince catches him, lowers him gently. No hatred, no glory, just silence. You step forward, unsure of what this moment is. A coronation, a death, a forgiveness, twisted into a curse. Behind you, the Book of Unfathers flips its own pages. One by one, slowly, purposefully, and on the last page the ink begins to write. There is no burial, no procession, no dirge sung through cold cloisters. Instead, they place the king beneath the throne, not in the catacombs where royals sleep in perfumed stone, but directly below the seat of judgment itself. A slab is lifted, a cavity revealed. You look down and expect earth or bone. Instead, there is breath. Warm, stale, unnatural. A gust rising gently from the blackness, as though the tomb is not a grave, but a mouth. Open, waiting, whispering for more. A long hiss sounds beneath the floor, as if a beast older than language exhales its final memory. And then the whispering stops. The breath halts. The tomb below goes still. Your footsteps echo where once the silence reigned. Then you hear it. A sigh low and wet, not from your throat. It was absorbed. You pressed your palm against the stone tiles. It pulsed faintly beneath your hand. You kneel. You listen. Beneath your ear, there is heartbeat. You ask him what he hears. Regret, he says. Warning. A single line has been added to its final chapter, etched in crimson. The father fell. The son remained, but not unchanged. The prince does not speak during the interment. He kneels. He closes his father's eyes. He is writing letters, though they contain no words, only stains, shapes, burnt corners. They must know, he says. Beyond the walls, other thrones, other fathers. He does not say what they must know. He does not have to. The tomb has begun to hum, soft, constant, low, like a song hummed through gritted teeth. And then, without robe or crown, he descends into the space. What survives after prophecy fulfills itself. You suspect it is not peace. You try to follow, but something repels you. Not physically, but with the weight of a command etched in blood long before you were born. But it trails behind him like smoke, a presence heavy and silent, that bends the light and makes the air taste like rusted bells and dried petals. The servants begin to sleepwalk. The ravens return, but now they sit inside the halls, perching on windowsills with unblinking eyes. The moon halts its course for a full night. And each day at dusk, the floor around the throne exhales mist, a soft, chilled vapor that smells of iron and incense. His skin is paler, his breath deeper. When he speaks, it is not to you. It is to the throne itself. You have fed long enough, he says. Now you will sleep. The stone groans shut behind him. Hours pass, no sound, no return. The court does not stir. There is no court. Only you and the walls that now watch with expectation. When he emerges, he carries something new. It is not a weapon. It is not a book. It is not even tangible. He places his hand upon the armrest. The stone darkens. Cracks form, but only for a moment. Later that night, you walk the hall alone. He was not buried. The tomb now lives. Not as a monument, but as a vessel. It speaks not in words, but in dreams. The prince does not explain, but he returns to sit above the breathing tomb, not to rule, but to listen. The book of Unfathers no longer flips pages. It is closed now, sealed with wax made from the fat of candles burned for generations. You wonder, not for the first time, what lies in the blood between love and obligation. The prince calls you one morning. He leans down, places both hands upon the floor, closes his eyes. The mist thickens. The crown waits, untouched, upon the steps. And beneath the stone, the last breath of a king coils itself into something not quite dead. It no longer speaks, not in word, not in echo, not in the creak of old stone beneath royal weight. The courtiers, what few remain, arrive and depart with bowed heads and pursed lips. They do not meet your gaze. You don't blame them. The throne, once a symbol of authority, has become a shrine, not to the dead king, but to what remains of him. Beneath the floor, the tomb no longer breathes. It dreams. The throne is cold. The crown rests atop it, slightly tilted, as though bowed by gravity or guilt. You walk forward, not because you want to, but because the silence calls you. As you near, you realize the truth. No one will sit here again, not because they cannot, because to do so would be to end the question. And its dreams leak upward in tendrils of thought, curling into the minds of those too near for too long. The throne sits as it always has, tall-backed, carved with the sigils of vanished houses, flanked by pillars once meant to awe, and yet now it feels smaller. It keeps it in a box made from the bark of the weeping tree, locked with a single thorn. His mask gathers dust. He speaks to no one, but he listens to everything. You dream of its pages opening again, revealing your name, your role, your sentence. The prince visits the tomb now at night, barefoot, unarmed. He kneels, places both hands upon the stone, and speaks in whispers too soft for sound. When he returns, he bleeds from the eyes, but he smiles, not with joy, with understanding. The wind, the dripping stones, the rustle of pages in books that should not open. You once asked him, "Are you king now?" He looked at you, and for a moment, you saw something in his eyes that was not human, not cruel, just distant. "There is no king," he said. "Only the echo of one. Not diminished, concentrated, like the eye of a storm that has finally found its center. The prince does not sit upon it. Its clock of no time still ticks. But now its rhythm matches your heartbeat, and you cannot tell which is following which. In the gardens, the trees grow in spirals. The birds no longer sing. When they do, it is with voices too deep, too slow, like a language meant only for those who have forgotten their own. He circles it each morning at dawn, tracing his fingers across its arms as though asking permission. It never grants it. Or perhaps it already has. You live now in the hush of its rule. No proclamations are issued. No judgments passed. The prince has grown stiller. He does not wear the crown. The castle has become something else. The mirrors no longer reflect even the walls. The ewer holds no water, only shadow. The book of unfathers remains closed. But the wax seal pulses, as if the story inside is not finished. One morning, you wake to find the throne room empty. The prince is gone. And the throne, above all things, is a question now. What are you willing to sacrifice to prevent becoming what you fear? What are you willing to inherit to prevent the story from repeating? You do not sit, you do not touch it. You kneel, as the prince did, and you listen. Beneath the stone, the tomb does not speak, but the silence is louder than prophecy. You stand at the edge now, not of a story, but of its residue. You have seen a father condemned by foresight, a son born beneath the weight of ruin, and a crown that demanded no wearer, only witness. The throne is still. The prince has vanished. The court breathes in shadows, and the echoes of prophecy coil like smoke through the chambers of your mind. You remember every moment, not as memory, but as haunting. So now, dear listener, ask yourself, what would you have done? Two sons who wear masks of silence to books that write themselves in blood. Then I invite you to walk further with us. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell. For the next tale descends even deeper. If you were king and the future promised, your own blood would rise against you, would you kill the child, or kill the prophecy, or worse still, become it? You've heard the tale of the mad king who killed his own son, and perhaps you wonder what truly ended him. Was it the blade? The mirror? The silence? Or was it the knowledge that no matter how much power you possess, time will always inherit the throne? Let us know what you believe. Was Othmar a monster, a martyr, or merely a man too aware of his story? Leave your thoughts in the comments. I read each one, even the ones that vanish by morning. And silence was proof of guilt. And if you find yourself drawn to the dark corridors of forgotten history, two kings who whisper to ghosts in our next episode, we will walk into firelight and shadow through forests of fear and madness, and bear witness to the terrifying witch hunts of the Middle Ages, where belief became weapon. Till then, keep your candle lit and remember, the throne still breathes,